Daniel's first day at the new school felt heavier than he expected. The building seemed too big, the hallways too loud, and every face around him felt like a reminder that he did not belong. He clutched his backpack straps tightly, as if holding on to something familiar could keep the waves of uncertainty from drowning him. His family had moved from another country just a few months ago, and although he spoke English, his accent still gave him away. That alone was enough to make him feel like an outsider, before he even had the chance to introduce himself. The classroom buzzed with chatter, children laughing and greeting friends they had known for years. Daniel sat in the back, wishing he could blend into the walls. The teacher, Ms. Carter, noticed him immediately. She had a warmth about her, the kind that could calm a storm with just a smile. She introduced him to the class, and while most students nodded politely, Daniel felt the distance in their eyes. Being different was not something he could hide. Later that week, Ms. Carter announced a group project. The students were to form teams and create a presentation about different cultures around the world. Daniel's heart sank. Group projects always carried the fear of rejection. What if nobody wanted him? To his surprise, Ms. Carter assigned the groups instead of letting students choose. Daniel was placed with 3 classmates: Aisha, whose family came from Nigeria; Miguel, whose parents were from Mexico; and Emily, who was born in the United States, but often felt caught between her parents' traditions and the world outside. At first glance, they seemed like a random mix. None of them were close friends. As they gathered around their table, silence stretched awkwardly. Miguel tapped his pencil against the desk. Aisha adjusted her braids and glanced at the others. Emily tried to smile but looked uncertain too. Daniel lowered his eyes, afraid to meet theirs. Ms. Carter encouraged them, reminding them that the beauty of the project was in sharing different perspectives. Yet Daniel felt the opposite. Was there differences that seemed to stand in the way? That evening at home, Daniel stared at his reflection in the mirror. He thought about his classmates' laughter, their ease with each other, their comfort in belonging. He felt like a puzzle piece that didn't fit, no matter how hard he tried. He wanted to be seen for more than his accent or his background, but he didn't know how. For now, he told himself, all he could do was show up to the project meetings and hope something would change. The first project meeting did not go smoothly. They gathered in the library after school, each carrying a notebook and a hesitant expression. Emily suggested starting with simple research, but Miguel immediately wanted to focus on food traditions. Aisha, however, was more interested in exploring music and dance, while Daniel quietly scribbled in his notebook, too nervous to share the ideas swirling in his head. Soon, their differences spilled into frustration. Miguel rolled his eyes when Aisha spoke passionately about Nigerian drumming. Aisha frowned when Emily insisted they needed structure before anything else. Daniel sat frozen, wishing he could speak but afraid his words might sound clumsy. He had thought group work would bring them closer, but it felt more like standing on different islands, separated by oceans of misunderstanding. Over the next few days, their meetings grew tense. Daniel noticed the way Miguel and Aisha's voices sharpened when they disagreed, and how Emily's face grew tight with impatience. Once, when Daniel finally tried to share his idea about including folktales from each culture, his words came out shaky. Miguel barely looked up. The silence that followed stung worse than open rejection. He wanted to disappear into the library shelves and never come back. One afternoon, as their arguments grew louder, Ms. Carter approached. She sat with them, her calm presence cooling the heated air. She asked each of them to explain why their chosen topic mattered to them. Aisha spoke of how music connected her to her grandmother, who taught her songs passed down for generations. Miguel shared memories of his family cooking together, the kitchen filled with laughter and the smell of spices. Emily admitted she often felt caught between cultures and wanted to create something that honored that confusion as well as the beauty. Finally, all eyes turned to Daniel. His throat tightened, but something in Ms. Carter's gentle gaze gave him courage. He spoke softly about the bedtime stories his father told him in their native language. Stories of courage and kindness that made him proud of where he came from. As he spoke, he noticed the others listening truly, listening for the first time. For a moment, the tension melted. Daniel felt a flicker of hope. Maybe their differences weren't a wall. Maybe they were pieces of a larger picture waiting to come together. But still, doubts lingered. Could they actually learn to work as a team? Or was this just another fragile moment that would break under the weight of disagreement? The answer, Daniel knew, would come only with time and trust you things he wasn't sure they had yet. The following week, something began to shift. Their conversations, once sharp and fragmented, grew softer as they allowed space for each other's voices. It started when Aisha brought her drum to school, offering to show them how rhythms told stories in her culture. At first, Miguel looked doubtful, but as the beat filled the classroom, his fingers began tapping along, his face brightening with curiosity. He promised to bring homemade tortillas for their next meeting, so everyone could taste his family's tradition. Emily laughed at the idea of combining music and food, and for the first time, Daniel felt the knot in his chest loosen. He gathered the courage to share his folktales again, this time with more confidence. He read one aloud, his voice trembling at first, but steadying as he saw their attentive faces. When he finished, Emily clapped softly and said it reminded her of the stories her parents told her, even if they came from a different place. Daniel felt warmth spread through him, like sunlight breaking through a long winter. Piece by piece, their project transformed. They wove together Aisha's music, Miguel's food traditions, Emily's reflections on identity, and Daniel's folktales. What had once been disagreements turned into threads of a tapestry. Each piece was unique, but together, they formed something richer than any one of them could have created alone. On presentation day, the group stood nervously before the class. Daniel looked at his teammates and saw not strangers, but companions. Aisha began with a drum rhythm that echoed through the room. Miguel spoke of family meals and the way food carried love across generations. Emily shared her struggle of living between cultures, her honesty drawing nods of understanding. Finally, Daniel stepped forward, his heart pounding, and told his story. The classroom was silent, every ear listening. For the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider, he felt like he belonged. When they finished, the applause filled the room. Miss Carter smiled proudly, her eyes shining as if to say she had known they would get here all along. Daniel glanced at his teammates, and they exchanged quiet smiles that carried the weight of their journey. Walking home that day, Daniel thought about how fearful he had been of being different, how heavy that fear had been. Yet those very differences had become their strength, shaping a project that touched everyone who heard it. He realized something simple but profound. The world does not need us to be the same. It needs us to bring our own colors to the canvas so the picture can be whole. Diversity is not just about coexistence, it is about discovery. Each person we meet carries a story, a rhythm, a flavor that can teach us something new. When we choose to respect differences, we open the door to connection, growth, and beauty beyond measure. Daniel and his friends learned this through a school project, but the lesson stretches far beyond the classroom. It belongs to all of us. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs a reminder of the strength in diversity. Like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring tales that speak to the heart.